Today's podcast is brought to you by Kentucky Farm Bureau Insurance. When it comes to home and auto insurance, it's important to have the right coverage from a company and an agent you can trust. Someone who will help you properly protect the people and things you love most. So if the unexpected happens, you and your family can rest insured. To request a free quote, find your local KFB insurance agent at mykfbagent.com. Kentucky Farm Bureau, big on commitment. Hey, Matt, how's it going?
It's going well. How are you doing?
I'm good. Yeah, things are good. We had a little warm weather for a minute. It cooled off a bit, but we're gonna make it.
Yeah.
Spring is in sight.
I saw the sun and blue skies. It's been a minute, so it's nice. We came back from a congressional tour. It was kind of warm and stuff like that. So yeah, the weather's starting to improve.
Yeah, and I will say, I was in my comfort zone for last week's podcast. We were talking all things cattle. My man Donovan and me were just jawing back and forth. This one's all you, brother. Yeah.
So we have a reporter from WLEX coming in that has some ag background, which you'll learn from today. And but yeah, we talk news. I actually, before I came to Farm Bureau, I worked at WLKY. I was a news photographer, so I just ran around, shot the news all the time, worked with reporters, as a team, ran out and did news day to day. So it got a little bit. I didn't do it. I did for about 2 years, and then ran into this great job that I've had for ever since. But so we want to encourage this. This is great that she's Megan Mannering from WLEX. She does a lot of ag reports. She does regular reporting, but also some agriculture stories. And we really just want to highlight that and talk to her about kind of why and what she's why she's involved in doing that. And she does have a background in it and really believes in it. So really cool. We talk a lot about misconceptions and different things when it comes to local reporting. I do a little bit of that when we do like media training. I talk a lot about these local folks. They're just trying to find a great story today, and you're the great story today. So you should say yes and really help them tell that story. And again, tell ag story here. That's an opportunity. So we love that she's here today, and I think our listeners will be real interested.
So just to clarify, because I didn't ask it during the podcast, I could have been the country girl silly question on this one.
Uh-huh.
A photographer is actually video and photo?
No. So yeah, they call them photographers, but
okay.
they are videographers.
Okay, because she says it in the podcast a couple times, and I'm like,
yeah, the photog, sometimes is the word you use.
Gotcha.
So, and that's she talks a lot about the ever-changing landscapes of news. A lot of them are what they call one-man bands now, where they go out and shoot everything and have to then aim the camera at themselves and do everything. So news has changed a lot, and that's a lot of I think some of the issues sometimes with news is those tightenings of the belt. The economics of it have changed journalism a little bit. Also, the amount of media that's out there, I think, has changed journalism a lot. So when someone's out there really doing it and telling our stories well, we definitely want to encourage it. But yeah, so yeah, I was a news photographer. So I would run out, go to breaking news, go out with reporters and tell a story that they were more involved in. Do live shots, so camera guy for the live shot at 11 o'clock news. I worked the 11 o'clock news for most of the time I was there. So I'd go in about 2 o'clock and work till almost midnight every day.
Wow.
During the week. So I did that, and it's fun. The pace is fun. It's a very punch in, punch out kind of job, especially in video. That's not necessarily kind of how it works. It's definitely not here. We're working on projects for weeks, days, or whatever. It takes a minute for us to produce things where you're making it that day. I've edited stories for the news in 10 minutes because it had to be on like right after something happened. Sometimes live shots become the report where you're rolling and doing all kinds of stuff. So yeah, it's changed a lot even since I've been there. That was almost 20 years ago, which is pretty wild. But yeah, so she's just a good person to highlight. Someone that is doing those stories. They are being done. They could be done more probably by different markets all over Kentucky, all over the country. But I just think it was a neat idea to have her come in and kind of tell why she does it and why those stories need to be told.
Yeah, for sure. You guys are going to gain a lot of perspective, but from an ag voice, which I think is cool. She may sound news reporter, but she's got that ag background. I think it'll be really neat. So without further ado, I'm Renee Carrico.
And I'm Matt Hilton.
And this is Between the Rows. Megan. How's it going?
It's fabulous. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks for traveling in. A nicer weather.
We did. Yeah, we had good weather.
It wasn't bad.
Not bad. So we appreciate you being here. Tell us more about you.
Who am I? What am I doing here? Yes. My name is Megan Mannering. I am a reporter and an anchor with LEX18 out of Lexington. I anchor the 5, 6, and 7 p.m., but I report during the days. But I'm an Indiana girl, so I'm like 4 hours from home here, and I'm a newsie. That's who I am.
Yeah. So how'd you get into reporting? Did you always want to do this growing up, or how did you get into it?
I didn't know that I wanted to go into reporting, but I always did theater growing up, and I loved talking in front of people, doing presentations. So when I was little, I was like, I'm obviously going to be a Broadway star because, like, why wouldn't I be? And then I went to college and realized that might be a little unrealistic. And I had a couple internships in newsrooms, took some cool TV classes, and I was like, yeah, this is what I want to do. I love that in news, no 2 days are the same, and you get to be out in the field, you get to meet people, meet your neighbors. I love that aspect of the job, so that's what drew me in. And I went to a little school outside of Indianapolis, got my first news job in Montana.
Wow. Okay, that's cool.
Landed here a few years ago.
Yeah. So you just moving through markets. I think I worked in news a little bit, and that it's kind of like how you. I don't want to say it's how you get promoted, but it's kind of like, and especially in reporting, you just kind of move markets.
Right.
So tell us about Montana. That's kind of cool. Like, where was that?
How much time do we have? Yeah. I could talk about Montana for hours. So after college, I just cast the wide net. I didn't know where I was going to go. And a little station in Missoula, Montana called me, and they were like, we will hire you on the spot. We are desperate. How soon can you get here? So packed up my little Volkswagen Beetle, drove across the country. I had never been there. I didn't know anyone. Wow. And of course, like a few months after I got there, the pandemic started. So that was bizarre because then everything was different. But
I think Montana's the best place for the pandemic.
Montana was the best place because people social distance already. They don't like to be around each other, and there aren't a lot of people there. So it was perfect. And I got really into hiking and kayaking and all that stuff. We would go up to Glacier every few weekends, and I loved Montana. If you haven't been, it's got to be on the travel list. Yeah,
it's beautiful. So so then you came to Kentucky. What was it about the station, the location? What was it about Kentucky? Yeah.
So the same company that owns LEX18 owns several stations in Montana. So I actually transferred from our quote unquote sister station. So I was looking at Norfolk, Virginia, Vegas, and Lexington. 3 very different environments. Oh, nice. Yeah. When I talked to some of the people on the news team in Lexington, it wasn't even the newsroom that sold me, but it was Kentucky. People are friendly here. It's beautiful, the rolling hills. And I feel like Kentucky has its own character and its own charm. There's a lot going on. There are college towns. You've got the Derby and Keeneland and Bourbon. It was hard to pass up.
Cool. So what part of Indiana are you from?
I'm from north central Indiana, about an hour and a half north of Indianapolis. Super small, 1 stoplight town. There's nothing there but the dog shed and a seasonal ice cream place.
I ask because a lot of our farmers, especially kind of on the river right there, those Indiana guys, they could just soon be one of us and we could be one of them. I mean, it's the same type of people. So I was curious if it was, if Kentucky just kind of felt like home, but sort of, but a little different. I could see that.
I think Kentucky is like a good mix of Midwest nice and Southern charm. It's like right in the middle. Yeah.
That needs to be the slogan. We need to call the governor. Midwest nice.
Andy, are you listening?
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, so we have you on here for a reason, right? So you've done some agriculture stuff. You have at least grew up around it and talk about your roots. Let's talk about some of the things of why you like doing stories on agriculture.
Absolutely. Like I said, I grew up in a really small rural town where everybody knows everybody, made up of mostly teachers and farmers. And when I was in the 3rd or 4th grade, a family friend encouraged me to join 4-H. And even though I grew up in a farm town, I never considered myself a farm kid because we lived in town. So that was a little out of my wheelhouse. But I signed up for 4-H, got a lamb, And that like sold me. I spent the whole summer, if you're a 4-H'er, you're familiar, you spend the whole summer walking your livestock, breaking them, getting ready for the fair. And I loved it. So that was kind of my gateway into ag and meeting all of the farm families in town. And then after a few years, I started keeping my lambs at my best friend's house, who also grew up on a sheep farm. So I just got totally thrown into this world of 4-H. And by the time I graduated high school, I was not just doing sheep, but doing the sewing and the scrapbooking and the queen contest. Like I was totally in it. And my senior year, I was the county queen. So I got to be like the official ambassador to the Cass County Fair, which is really cool. And I had a lot of pride in that. And I just gained this appreciation for ag. And then a fun fact, right after college, before I moved to Montana, I got an internship at the Indiana State Fair. So I spent the summer there, and for the 3 weeks of the fair itself, I actually lived on the fairgrounds, slept in a bunk bed in a dorm above the horse barn.
Wow.
Wow.
Okay.
And I ate fair food for 3 meals a day for 3 weeks straight and just absolutely destroyed my digestive system. But it was so worth it. It was a blast.
Yeah.
Well, and for anyone that's not familiar, I didn't know this. I showed hogs. So the Indiana State Fair, Indiana's county fairs in general. I mean, when I was on the gold team for livestock judging, we literally had a whole workout at a county fair, and people were like, this has got to be a district level show. It's got to be bigger. I mean, just the level on the county side in Indiana, which is true testament to how much their livestock programs are built up. But their state fair, it's another level. Our facilities are phenomenal. I mean, we will never let that go. We host North American Farm Show. We got it. But Indiana State Fair, from a numbers perspective, you guys see a ton of people. And there's so many activities.
A ton. Yeah, the fair, working there, my brothers would make fun of me and they would be like, what are you, a carny? I'm like, no, like there's so much that happens at the Indiana State Fair. If you get the chance to go, it is impressive. And the facilities are nice. It just made me think the hog barn, up until a few years ago, it didn't have air conditioning.
Yeah, they just redid it. Y'all are kicking it now.
But before that, I mean, it was like ancient. And my dad was the high school football coach forever. And every summer, he would take his team to the hog barn at the Indiana State Fair, and we would clean out the hog barn after the fair. I mean, there are like thousands of pins.
So many.
That's a lot of hog crap. And it wasn't air conditioned. And so you have like 60 high school boys, pushing around all
Who
that
needs
stuff.
two-a-days when you have a hog barn?
Right.
For real. I know, but they would pay the team. So it was like their fundraiser for the year. And it was a great workout.
Yeah.
How cool.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. Very cool. Yeah. So yeah, you come, did you do some ag reporting up in Montana? But what was it about? I mean, you're right in the heart of a lot of agriculture, obviously in Lexington, but what was it about like saying, all right, now I'm doing this.
Sure.
Is there some way I can, tell that story?
I think for starters, from growing up in the 4-H world in Indiana, meeting a lot of ranchers in Montana and now farmers in Kentucky, I've noticed that they all have one thing in common. They're very hardworking people. Like ag people, they just are. Nose to the grindstone people. I love that, and it's an environment that I like to be in. So I think naturally I'm drawn to telling those stories because I like the people. But I did a lot of ag stories in Montana. It's kind of hard to avoid out there because it is such a part of the way of life. But here in Kentucky, it wasn't until like a year ago that I had a conversation with one of my managers, and we were just talking about all of these ag story ideas and how nowadays you don't see ag reporters anymore in newsrooms. Like, I think that used to be something that a lot of newsrooms had, just like they'd have an investigative reporter and a politics reporter. That's not the case anymore. And so we just had this conversation, like there is a gold mine of stories to be told, stories that need to be told. And we aren't sharing those with our audience. So I just have tried to make more of an effort to pitch ag stories over the last year. And it's been awesome. Like I love being in that environment, meeting the farmers, meeting the 4-H'ers. And Kentucky is an ag state, so it just makes sense.
Well, I can't imagine how much more comfortable people are when they do meet you and know you have that background. I think as one that grew up on a farm, I think, and I hear that from some of our guys, we'll train them and we'll get them comfortable. But there's just that moment when that camera shows up, and Matt sees it, they think, well, if I misstep, what if that reporter doesn't know, and they use that. So you having at least a little bit of the understanding of the jargon and I think that'll make guys a lot more comfortable. I mean, it makes us comfortable to send you the names. I know that for sure.
Definitely. It's helped a lot. And it's funny, almost every farmer I interview is so apprehensive. And they're like, I'm not really an on-camera kind of person. I don't know about this. They always end up being the best interviews without fail. But when you're able to connect with them and say, I grew up in a town like this. I, know farming families. I know some of the struggles that you go through. If you can make that connection, then the walls can come down and you can get a really good story. Yeah,
speaking to that, there's the media has a bad rap sometimes, right?
Sure.
There's some misconceptions. I think, I get to be a part of like media training with farmers a lot of times. And a lot of what I tell them is that local reporter, first of all, probably doesn't know enough about agriculture. Not that you know more, but they're just trying to get a good report. They're also trying to find a great source for the next ag report they got to do or that gets handed to them. And I think there's a lot of misconceptions. What do you think are some of those, and why do you think they exist, especially at the local level?
Yeah.
These local reporters probably don't have an axe to grind. They're just trying to tell a correct story, right?
I love that you asked this question. In recent years, obviously, there's been so much scrutiny over the national media that has really trickled down into local media. And I always say, local journalists do not get paid enough to have an agenda. I wish we did, but we just don't. We're just, we're on a deadline every day. But I would say, in regards to maybe the scrutiny and why local media gets a bad rap, I think it's just because of the scrutiny that comes from the national level. But at the end of the day, these are usually young people out of college just trying to make a deadline, trying to connect with their neighbors. And they're just that, they're neighbors. We're local people, just like you. We're building lives here, building families here. So I hate that there is that hesitation to trust local media, and I hope that changes. But I would say we're your neighbors. We don't have an agenda. We just want to tell a good story that helps people understand what's going on around them, that helps people connect with their community. And like I said, Kentucky is an ag place. So telling those ag stories is really important.
So for a non-reporter, someone who's never been in the newsroom, help me, because Matt explained this to me and it was very, very eye-opening. I mean, I think we watch TV, we see the shows and we're like, oh, what a deadline, or the news broke. And so I think we think of it in like a news broke and we got to run that direction.
Yeah.
Okay, just an average day. It's just a normal day in Lexington. You're just doing your reporting, What is that timeline? Just so a farmer could understand kind of, because you say you're hitting a deadline. We're hitting the show deadline. What does a day look like? Or what is a 24 hours before your next one? Kind of explain that process.
Sure. So you usually don't know what your assignment is until the morning that you get in, because we're operating on day of news. You can pitch a story maybe a day in advance if it's like a feature, but more often than not, you're going to be put on the news of the day. What bill was just passed, what crime happened overnight, what politician is in town, what's going on that day. So you're not getting your assignment until you walk in the door. And we have newscasts throughout the day, and each one is about 30 minutes. So you have 30 minutes to fill with content. So I have kind of a weird shift. I come in at 10:30, I get my assignment. I have a few hours to figure out how I'm going to get that story on air that evening. So that's identifying, okay, who do I need to call for this? Who are the experts? Who are the people impacted? Hopefully they agree to an interview, link up with them, do said interview, run back to the station, transcribe the interview, and then you write multiple versions of your story. You might write a condensed version and then the full version, and you get all that ready. A photographer edits it together, and then usually you ship it off like an hour before the show and just hope that it makes air. And in my shoes, once I get done with that, I anchor the 5, 6, and 7. So it's kind of a hodgepodge of a day. In the meantime, the police scanners are always blaring in the newsroom. So you said, news is breaking. That does happen. So you'll hear that there's a big crash on I-64, and a photographer will hop up and run out the door to go see what's going on and get footage. It's kind of crazy, but it's fun.
It's just eye-opening to me, because you could spend all this time. Well, it seems really fast with the time you have to spend, but the quality has to be there. It's such a short time frame. And then you could do all three of those versions in one pile up and one bill gets passed, and your story could not make that cut that day. So that's just a wild, for those of us that have a task, I successfully achieved that task. Farmers work on their own schedule to an extent.
Right.
It's got to be a weird perspective to know that sometimes you're going to get every story that day in, and then sometimes you're going to 0 for 3 and we'll try again tomorrow. That's got to be such a different way to motivate.
Yeah, and it can be tricky to just simply finding interviews. That's really hard in this job because you only have a few hours to even find people that could be a good interview, and that doesn't mean that they're going to want to go on the news.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time people are like, they see the camera and they're, get that away from me. I don't want to do an interview. I don't want to talk. It's a lot to do in one shift, but I think the cool part about it is that because you're on a brand new deadline, a brand new story every day, at the end of the day, like you're done with it. You made air, you put it away, and the next day is something completely new.
Yeah, I always hit a punch card kind of. Right, well, that didn't go great, but got another day tomorrow. I'll be here tomorrow.
Right.
Yeah. I think that's what I kind of discuss a lot with farmers. Sometimes somebody will do an interview and they're like, "Well, they didn't really seem like they knew anything." I was like, "Well, today they got told they're doing that."
Right.
And I mean, we're expecting people to be experts.
Sure.
And they're inquisitive more than knowledgeable. And I said that's one thing I tell a lot of folks. These reporters are coming to ask questions, and some of them might be a little dumb, frankly, because they are a journalist. They're asking questions that they think their viewers want to hear, or they just are interested in, or they don't understand. Especially in our industry, there's we talk about we're the voice of agriculture. We're trying to create that. So I tell folks a lot, especially in that media training, is like, these people, they're doing that story that day. Give them a little grace. They're asking maybe a dumb question. So answer the question. Just answer the question. Yeah. Because they probably got it's that idea given to them that morning.
Totally.
They're suddenly, this ag expert. And like, no, they can't do that.
Right. Well, and I think going back to the fact that newsrooms don't have designated ag reporters anymore, there's a lot of belt tightening happening in the news industry. So newsrooms are smaller. They just have less people. They're hiring younger people, and they have more on their plates now. So you're so right. It's not uncommon for a 25-year-old to get a story assignment about the farm bill, and in one shift, they have to figure out, okay, what is the farm bill? Why is this important? Who do I need to talk to?
Right.
It is a lot. I usually start my interviews with, give me the nuts and bolts of what we're talking about today. Right. In layman's terms, for the person that knows nothing about this, what would you say? And yeah, it's kind of a dumb question, but I think it's important to recognize that our viewers are coming to us with all different levels of education. Some know about ag, some don't at all. So, you kind of have to, I guess, ask the dumb questions sometimes.
Yeah, I've been asking questions to farmers for 20 years almost. And I kind of warn them last time. I'm going to ask questions that I know I've done this long enough at least to know the answer to. And that's a lot of when we talked about doing this podcast. It was like, we have to ask questions as if we don't know anything, sort of sometimes,
Well, and we say this all the time, but we get to talk to these farmers and get these one-on-one things. And Matt gets to share a lot of that with the video and the content. I don't always get to. I'm on a farm visit and they open up. We're one-on-one and there is no camera. So that's what I love about the podcast is the sense that, yes, the microphone's intimidating, but not nearly like a camera light. So if I can get a guy comfortable with a microphone, then maybe the next step is he can be the next one we send your way when it's like, hey, we're in a drought. I've got to have a cattle producer and our first 2 hits weren't ready. Okay, let's ease in our newbie that's getting comfortable. Right. Okay, this reporter kind of knows what's going on. We've done this before. It makes it an easier transition. And I think that's very important. It's helpful, I think, to understand the perspective of who is talking to you. Sure. If you know that, because it's easy for us to say, well, your audience doesn't know either. So answer the dumb question because the audience may not know. Sometimes it's just nice to understand, okay, the person across from you has a deadline, but they want to help. Right. So if there's something you can help on the front end, just tell them like, hey, man, I would love to get this shot, not that one. If you don't tell them, they don't know you don't want them to catch the thistles in your field. Like, you just got to talk to them, So if you can get that comfortability, I think it helps. And perspective's key. I mean,
we say it all the time. It's like, if there's a really good backdrop, just take them there. They'll probably be like, cool, yeah, this is great.
Right.
Like you can answer and ask a lot of questions when they call you. Say, hey, what is this about? These people aren't scary. They're really, really not. And
usually the nicest people that you'll meet on the job.
They're just trying to get a good story. And again, it's creating a source too. I was like, if you're good, they're not calling somebody else, and who knows who that someone else could be. If you're really a good source for them, they might not use you again, but they might call you and be like, hey, I need somebody that does this. Do you know somebody?
Yeah.
You become a resource for them that's really, really valuable, I think. So.
Yeah. And your team has been really helpful with that. I mean, B. Todd has sent several story ideas our way and a few people to talk to. Shane Wiseman, I interviewed.
Mm-hmm.
He's the man.
Yeah.
He's wonderful.
He gave me like 10 story ideas in one. He was wonderful. The Department of Ag, Commissioner Shell's team, they've been really helpful in hooking us up with different farmers to talk to. And you're right. Once you make those connections, then you can kind of expand that network, and it's really helpful.
So what are some of those? What are some of, and I know that's so hard because you do so many stories, but what are some of the ones that stand out? You're like, oh, this one just knocked it out of the park. What a cool ag story. I'm so glad I got to share.
We do so many now across the board.
It's wonderful for us to hear. I love that there's so many different.
I
don't know which one to do. Yeah.
I know, it's good. Well, thinking back to last summer, we did a lot of weather-related stories because we were dealing with, one, we started the summer, we had way too much rain, and then we were in a drought. And, from one county to the next, crops just looked completely different. So I did several stories like that, just talking to local farmers. How's your season? What does this weather mean for you? We did some fun stories over this last year. I'm thinking the Sunshine Class.
Yes.
Or we didn't go to the state fair. They did a local one in Frankfurt before the state fair for folks with special needs to show sheep. That was really special. With my sheep background and seeing people who don't often get to be in that atmosphere experience it, that was super fun. And then I've done several on the boom in agritourism, which, talk about a treasure trove of stories. There's so much to be unpacked there. In Kentucky, tobacco used to be the crop, and it just doesn't look like that anymore. And we've talked to a lot of local farmers who have really changed up their operations. And, they don't farm tobacco anymore, but maybe they have an apple orchard or an agritourism business, a pumpkin patch, something like that. So, yeah, we've just done a lot of different ag stories across the board. I was here a few weeks ago talking to Eddie Melton about said farm bill and trying to break that down and understand that more. So that did not really answer your question. I could not pinpoint one, but
I think you just gained a lot of credibility. With our farmers, because I think you just said exactly what is happening in your viewing area, and I think that is exactly it. How and what are our guys being affected by, and then why are they diversifying or changing into the ways they have? And that's the change from tobacco. And how have they done that? Some guys have expanded crops and cattle. Some guys have gone agritourism. No, I love to hear all of it. And it hits a lot of different human interest pieces. It's hard to tell a guy like, it's hot, and cows need water too. And, they're like, oh, that sucks. It's nice to also say, if you're free this weekend, there's an apple orchard and there's something to do. It's nice to see both sides where it's like, okay, farming's fun. Also, farming's tough. So if they can see both stories, sometimes it makes the whole environment better. So I appreciate it. I thought it was a great synopsis.
I think there's that education bit to it. My best friend from home, who I raise sheep with, she's now an extension educator in our home county. And I've learned a lot from her. A lot of kids think their food comes from the grocery store. They think it shows up and it's grown from the grocery store. And so I think there is that education bit. We have a duty to inform our viewers and you're right, to let them know the struggles that farmers face, the wins that they have, and kind of going back to misconceptions. I wanted to mention this too. We hear from a lot of viewers, the news is so negative. I don't watch it anymore. It's just all bad news. And I hear you. I read the news every night, and it can be super negative. But when we get the chance to tell a really uplifting, positive story about the 5th generation farmer who's going in a new direction or bringing people out to the farm, those are the best moments. And we want to tell those stories. So if you've got them, reach out to me, please.
And I push back when people say that. I push back on farmers and say, okay, well, then when you see it, share it. Because bad gets shared a lot of times. Oh, there was a wreck. Don't go that route. Right. Oh, there was a shooting. That's really sad. And I'm not saying those shouldn't be shared, but then you need to share the good stuff and encourage the fact that, hey, these news stations have to benefit from viewership and shared content. So if you see your buddy, I don't care if you've seen it on your timeline 45 times that day, be the extra share and make sure that news station knows, hey, our industry and our town appreciated seeing this story, because that encourages that good news piece. I think. I kind of push back. We got some responsibility in our own industry. We can't just push back and say, hey, news,
well,
come talk to us.
Within the industries, a lot of the a lot of farmers are just humble, so they don't
Yes.
ever want to do.
Yes.
They don't want to be like highlighted or anything. And then I'm like, well, okay, well when you complain about all the negative farm stories, we need to just drill that with positive
Yeah.
farm stories as
Yeah.
well. And so I've encouraged other farm bureaus, lots of folks to do more video, get it out there. So anytime we get like news stations also doing it, this is good because there is lots of really good stories. There's some negative, but there's also more good ones. And so put them out there, pump those out, share them, use them.
Yeah.
So we do them all the time. We're trying to do these ag stories ourselves. And that's one thing I was like, we need more of it. So,
We do.
And that kind of leads to the next question is like, do you recommend stations do this? Now you're in a unique market. I mean, I think Lexington is such a unique place because it's an urban, it's a city, but it's just so surrounded by horse
Right.
farms and agriculture. I mean, it's got this real neat blend, even more than Louisville, of course. Those urban cities, bigger cities like Louisville. But do you recommend these stations find someone in their staff to go tell more of these stories?
Yes.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
It's hard. Newsrooms are smaller, they're stretched thin, but we have an obligation to our viewers to inform them. And ag is so, so, so important. And
Right.
it's something that I think people have become kind of disconnected with if they do live in that urban setting. Absolutely. I think if you have reporters on your staff who are willing to learn and make connections in the ag world to meet farmers, send them, go do that. Also, when you think about our viewers, a lot of them are farmers. I mean, we're in a farming community. So, and people like to see themselves represented in the news and their stories told. So, yes, the short answer is absolutely newsrooms need to be doing more to get that ag content out there.
Yeah, I mean, when we look at numbers of like just agriculture content out online, there's a lot of negative, and but there's all kinds of great stories. And often when we ask a farmer, hey, we want to do a story. Hey, you sure you want to do it on me? Why would you want to do it on me?
Why me?
Yeah.
Or they're
All
like,
the time.
I sound like a hick or something. And I'm like, no, you got asked for a reason, or you got given to me for a reason. Or a lot of things. We promote a lot of our winners of contests that we have and those kind of things. You won something. You're kind of juried into being that, right? Like you had some group said you're good at something. So that's why we're here, So be you and do all that kind of thing. So, but that's big thing is like the humbleness of this industry. They just don't like, why would you want to come and see that? And you're like, because people don't.
It's that double-edged sword.
Right.
That's one of the best things about farmers. They are humble and they are hard workers, and that's why I admire them so much. At the same time, they don't really want to share their wins with the public, so it can be hard to, draw those stories out of them. But
yeah, I'm always like, no, just be you.
Yeah.
We're here for you, not for, it's in most of our stories, we have our executive level people in videos a lot. And you literally see it, the analytics. They get viewed. They do great. But when we have the regular Joe farmer in a story, it does a lot better. Lot better on social media because people are interested in those, I wouldn't say regular Joes, but those folks, those day-to-day farmers. It's not even close because they want to hear those real stories, those people that look like that neighbor they have or like their cousin that does it or so,
Definitely,
they want to see that. And I think it's very important that these markets all over the country, because even in a Louisville or Chicago or something like that, Illinois is very agriculture based. Sure, Chicago maybe in particular may not be, but everybody in Chicago eats. Everybody in Chicago likes fresh produce. Everybody in Chicago likes those things. So telling those stories is interesting to people, and it definitely highlights and opens those doors. I think that's one thing too. Agriculture is kind of like, let me just do my thing, and I don't want to be all out in the world. And I'm like, yeah, but you're not doing anything wrong. Like, let's just come here and see what you do. And that's been better through my time doing this. It was even coming in with the Farm Bureau logo on my shirt, the apprehension.
Really?
And I'm like, no, that's cool, man. We're definitely going to take it. What do you think we're going to do, But that's really gone away. But so we appreciate you telling these stories and putting it out there.
absolutely. Well, it's one thing, to have your meteorologist saying, oh yeah, haven't had rain in X number of days. But it's another thing to hear the farmer saying, we haven't had rain in X number of days, and this is what it means for me, which is what it means for your family or your kid's school when it comes to food and produce. So there's such value in it. And I appreciate you letting me come on and talk about it.
Yeah. So where, if people want to follow your journey, your journalistic journey.
Yeah.
Do you have ways people can see what you're up to?
Absolutely. So if you go to LEX18.com, I do a story every day. So you can kind of scroll through there and see what I'm working on. But on social media, I'm on Twitter, Megan C. Mannering, and I just started my professional Facebook page. So you can find me on there. It's just Megan Mannering, Mannering.
Cool.
Pretty easy. And like I said, if you've got a story idea, send me a message, shoot me an email. I want to hear about it.
Cool.
Fantastic. We cannot thank you enough. We were so excited when we were able to work this out because we do know, and now the viewers know, or the listeners know, the schedule that you work on
Right.
every day. But I hope this gives them some confidence in the perspective and in the media. It's a tough world out there, and I'm not saying everything you hear is right and everything you hear is wrong, but it's great for people to understand there's two sides to every story, and
Right.
there's people that want to tell your story. So I can't thank you enough for being here and being with us today.
Well, thank you both. This was really fun to be on this side of the interviewing.
Yeah, good deal.
Very cool.
Well, thank you, Megan, and thank you, listeners. Be sure to subscribe to our larger podcast, Kentucky Farm Life, and we'll see you next time on Between the Rows.